Hi everyone, I welcome you all to our podcast series. And today we are yet again back with another podcast. Now, I am Chavi, your podcaster of the day. I am back with some amazing topic this time. It's going to be around cybersecurity and cloud computing. Now, you would be thinking, who would be the special speaker who would be coming and taking this amazing topic and to talk about it, right? So, to talk about cybersecurity and to unleash the power of cloud computing with it, we have a very special guest. We have Ishan with us, who is currently the VP product at Edgio. So, to start with, hello Ishan, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So, before when I start with anything, would love to know that how you started your journey, and right now in the present time as a VP product, what are your roles and responsibilities are look like?
Yeah, let me tackle those in reverse order. So I'm Ishan Anand, VP of Product for the Edgio application platform. And the Edgio application platform allows teams to build, accelerate, and protect their web applications and APIs. My journey, I like to say I slowly been working my way up the stack. So right out of college, I was doing very low level systems programming and then went to applications and then cloud web and mobile. I joined Edgio via the acquisition of Layer Zero, where I was actually the CTO, and it's been a really interesting journey, and really looking forward to helping solve our customers' problems in the cloud, especially around security, performance, and how they accelerate their team velocity.
That's actually great. And as you talked about this, I would be very happy to ask you something about what are your views on these new technologies which are like right now emerging, especially in the field of cybersecurity space?
Yeah, there's a lot of change and a lot of interesting things happening in cybersecurity space right now. So let's start with the one that's really on the tip of, like, it seems like everyone's tongue, and that's, with the rise of Dolly, Midjourney, ChatGPT. People have been totally amazed by what AI can do. Right? Everyone's talking about it. These large language models, super amazing. If you haven't tried them out, go try these things out and start learning about them. This is a classic example of a double-edged sword. Both the attackers and the defenders, the good guys and the bad guys, are going to be seeing what they can do with this technology. So on the attack side, obviously, attackers are going to start using this. I think we're going to see the rise of attacks we haven't even imagined yet, and they're not necessarily going to be super technical. With something like ChatGPT, you can imagine that the attackers now have the ability to automate social engineering style attacks in a way they haven't been able to do before. So expect, more kinds of novel attacks coming out of this. On the flip side, it's a great tool on the defender side. Now our AI and ML models can be a lot smarter. We can use it for improved threat detection and response. We can use it to automate tedious and repetitive tasks. We can provide more advanced security analytics, less false positives, so people are less stressed out. We're already actually been using machine learning techniques in our infrastructure for things like detecting when there's slowdowns and bottlenecks and routing and allocating resources around those. And we just recently rolled out some ML-based bot management solutions as well. So this is definitely an area that we're heavily interested in and looking very strongly at. Less obviously, as another technology that got a lot of news recently, 5G and the rollout of 5G networks with more connected devices. That's going to mean there's more devices to compromise, which is going to lead to a growth in the scale and frequency of attacks. We're just going to see them bigger and bigger. We know year after year, we're seeing larger and larger DDoS attacks. That unfortunately is going to continue. Some less obvious other things coming along are a move from client side to server side based machine learning models for bot management and bot detection. So in the last few years, there was a rise in techniques that were based client side on device, whether in the browser or inside an SDK, that tried to determine whether this was an attacker. So you might look at, are the mouse movements indicative of this being a human or it being, say, an automation that's trying to attack your website. The problem is that the client device itself can always be compromised. And so for really strict security, you can't rely on client-side data. It's a useful form of data, but I think we're going to see a return to more server-side based ML techniques. Similarly, there's actually a need for improved client-side security solutions in general. There's been a rise in attacks that try to compromise the JavaScript code running inside the browser. The most famous example of this was called MageCart, because it attacked Magento, which is an e-commerce platform, shopping carts. And what these attackers were able to do was nothing went wrong on the server. They were just able to get nefarious, malicious JavaScript to execute that they controlled, and it would steal the user's credit card and personal information and send it to the attacker's servers. So look for more solutions to mitigate and thwart those types of attacks, client-side protections. And then finally, the last thing I would say that people are looking for more long-term is a post-quantum world. So, now with quantum computers, it's becoming less, theoretical that RSA encryption can be broken. And so some organizations are trying to plan for what that might mean as they look in their long-term security roadmap.
That was really interesting and insightful at the same time. Now, I wanted to talk about this point of privacy in these AI bots, because right now it's not just about ChatGPT. As we are talking about ChatGPT, people are starting exploring the other AI bots as well, which can help you in your editing and so many other
Yeah,
stuff. So what are your views on that? That it's not about that they are going to take our jobs, but it's about the privacy thing. It's about that how our data will be used by those organizations, by which we are using those AI bots and all. What are your views on the cybersecurity part?
yeah. So that's actually a really interesting angle. Because you know you've got these AI models that are going to use a lot of data, and then they might actually sometimes spit back out the very same data they used in training. So one thing, I encourage people to check them out, and some people are using them for their own work. Be careful you do not put sensitive data, for example, into ChatGPT. They'll even put a warning there because it becomes part of the training data. And people have run experiments where they've got, something like Stable Diffusion to actually just output an example of its training data. So that can leak out. There's a huge also copyright issue with them. I would say the top concern I have actually is reliability. And the reason is these models can sometimes, as they say, hallucinate. And that's really important in, the security field where, the good guys are already drowning in false positives, right? And what we don't want them to have is to have more false positives. And unfortunately for the attackers, there's an asymmetry. If an attack has a false positive on their end and doesn't quite work, they'll just go on and do new attacks. Like there's less. But on the defenders, they just have to get in once. And so I think the uptake for the attackers might be a little faster than the uptake for the defenders because you have to maintain that reliability. You don't want to add something that's going to create more noise in your security system. So that's actually my biggest concern right now with those types of systems, like that kind of training. I think the privacy and copyright are really interesting angles that'll need to be sorted out as well. But I think the noise one is top of mind in my head.
That's actually pretty much true, because I saw that few of the companies are also raising that thing that their employees are using ChatGPT, and somehow they like the employees of the company, they themselves are providing all their private those important information to the AI bot without even thinking once that what's going to happen,
Yeah.
because obviously it's again illegal and it's not safe.
It's so amazing you can forget the basic rule, which is when you're on a page or any type of digital experience, think carefully about the information you're sharing. And we all make this kind of mistake. Like we might post something on Twitter that maybe reveals our location or something else that's sensitive. So the same rule also applies with this. You might think you're just having this conversation with this AI intelligence, if you want to call it, but that thing's going to learn and potentially spit that back out. So treat it like it might be going potentially onto a social network. I think that definitely requires bearing in mind, and it can be easy to forget because these systems can, be amazingly fun and engaging. There was a podcaster recently who made this point. He's like, with ChatGPT, for example, there's long wait times sometimes because the systems are overloaded unless you're on the paid version. That shows a level of interest and engagement that people haven't been used to, like waiting for web pages to load for a long time, and it can get carried away. But definitely exercise the same level of caution you would for any piece of information. Again, and I would caution people: there are people who are using it for work, and so make sure you don't put sensitive information in there, or you think through that, or you talk to your CISO, your chief information security officer, so that you're not doing that. You should expect company policies around what types of information you might share with these types of large language models or other AI services, which are going to be running on a cloud provider you may or may not have a relationship with or control.
That's so true. And also, one thing that I wanted to ask you that when it comes to cybersecurity, every country is in a very different level when it comes to the cybersecurity part, how secure their network is, how many hackers they have, the ethical ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, in your point of view, how currently India is functioning in the case of cybersecurity? Are we like upscaling, or we are not?
I would say I don't have firsthand knowledge on how India is playing in it, but I would say in general, international cooperation and collaboration in cybersecurity is hugely important. And we have, I'm used to dealing with it through organizations that kind of already kind of collaborate, things like OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, which already brings together a lot of global threat management into their reports. But the international cooperation is hugely important because it's a little naive to think that if an attack comes, it'll only go to your enemy, so to speak. Eventually, these techniques for attacks typically migrate from one attacker to the next and get into the community. So even if the attack is, say, coming from within one country to another country, and you're just a bystander, and you can't think, oh, I'm not affected. An attack on anybody else in the community is going to be a novel attack, I should say, on anyone in the international community. Eventually, will be on coming at you in the future, and so that type of information sharing is really important.
Exactly, that's true, and that was insightful at the same time. And according to you, like how like we should keep ourselves secure when it comes to the cyber attacks, because as you mentioned in the
Yeah,
starting, that there are a lot of cyber security attacks that we can obviously be facing in the future
yeah,
because of all these emerging technologies. We are just looking to that, okay, we are just having so many amazing technologies, we are
yeah,
growing, but at the same time we are not at all thinking about the cyber attacks. So
yeah,
would love
yeah.
to know some
So
advice.
the first thing is your organization's staff, your people and personnel are actually your first line of defense against things like social engineering, still a big, phishing attacks and baiting. And the number one thing there is training. Train your staff. Invest in tools that'll help train your staff, including things like sending them phishing attacks to see how many people in your organization just statistically might be vulnerable, and then providing them the tools and training against that. So that's the number one first thing I would say that people need to be aware of and make sure they do. I think for the security personnel, the people who manage, say for example, your websites and your security, there are a couple things they should do. The first is, we talked earlier about one of the things we're going to see is increasing scale and increasing frequency of attacks. So I think we're going to observe in the industry a move towards cloud-based and edge-based security solutions. And that's because that's the only way you're going to have the ability to deal with the scale of these larger attacks. You can't use an on-prem security solution and deal with that scale unless you've got a ton of capital to invest. And the other key advantage of doing things at the edge is that you can thwart the attack closer to the attacker themselves. That means if they're doing a denial of service attack, you're able to prevent the load that they're adding to get further into your infrastructure. And then finally, for a lot of organizations, stitching together a lot of best of breed security solutions can create a management overhead, and it allows for gaps in the chain. So one of the things to help alleviate that is combining WAF, bot management, and API protection into a single holistic solution. I think we're going to see more of that happening. And that'll reduce the complexity and actually hopefully lower the stress level of, CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers. I think one of the things that gets lost in the cybersecurity discussion is the human factor. I talked about, the people being your first line of defense, against social engineering, but even your security operations personnel are a really important asset. It's not just about software and technology. And there was a recent survey that showed that a lot of CISOs are overstressed and burnt out with an average tenure of something like 26 months. Because, for them, it's kind of like, we've used this analogy like living on a fault line. You've done everything you think you can to protect your organization, but you can never be 100% safe. There's always, say, things like a 0-day vulnerability, which, there was no way by definition you could have known about it previously. And so, a catastrophe could be happening, and it's a very nerve-wracking situation. And one way to deal with that is those holistic solutions that stitch things together so you don't have the complexity of managing it. But the other key insight is that at a certain point, investing in protection actually has diminishing returns. You certainly want to do what you can, but you might be more served by investing in an ability to respond. In fact, if you do too much protections, you might have such a system so locked down you can't respond quickly. And this happened with Log4j, which was a vulnerability came out, 0-day vulnerability. As soon as it happened, though, people who were using, JD&I in their organizations, they didn't know if they should roll out mitigation measures because it might actually break the functionality of their organization. So you need to invest in tools that let you respond really quickly. And that's really the hidden side of cybersecurity most people don't think about, is their ability to respond is actually as important as the prevention measures that they put in place.
That's actually really great to hear that. And also, I would be very happy to conclude this podcast with one question that, like, when it comes to cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and everything, what's going to be happening in future? I would love to know from your side that what is your vision on that, how things will be shaping. Will AI be a very scary thing for us? For the general audience, I would love to know, because obviously the developers still know what is phishing, what is DOS, and the other attacks, but
Yeah.
general audience have no idea about the cybersecurity, how it works. They would simply be clicking on the links that would be coming, and then they would be surely be attacked. So what's gonna be happening in future, according to you?
The only thing I can reliably say is there'll be a lot of change. And I think I would classify, as I mentioned earlier, the ways to prepare into two categories. One is making sure the general audience or the general population of the organization is sufficiently trained against social engineering and phishing and other things. Those basics don't go away. Just like we talked about with privacy, those same basics think about the information you're putting into something. Those aren't going to go away. For the security personnel and the experts, they need to invest in the tools to make sure that the rest of the organization is prepared. And then they need to look for tools that leverage these new technologies, because it is an arms race between the good guys and the bad guys. And you want to make sure that you're buying solutions that leverage those tools just as well as the attackers are leveraging those tools like AI and ML. I think we're going to see, as I mentioned earlier, novel forms of attacks that we hadn't imagined or that hadn't become popular, that had only been theoretical. I think that's definitely on the horizon, and it's going to continue to be an arms race. And it's going to be both interesting but also nerve wracking. And I don't think we should forget, just again, with the increase in connected devices, larger, more frequent attacks of just the plain vanilla variety are going to continue. I know it's very exciting to think about the AI stuff, but and I love speculating about it as well. But the basic stuff, social engineering and just simple like DDoS attacks, are going to just get larger and more frequent. And we need to also make sure we cover those basics as well and not get lost in the shiny object, distracted from the fundamentals.
That was really fabulous to hear that. And again, like, the things that you shared was so amazing at the same time. Let's see what's going to happen in the future. And I'm pretty much sure that general audience would surely be learning about cybersecurity because of all the emerging technologies which are coming up in the future. So, with that note, thank you so much, Ishan, for joining for this amazing podcast. And for the viewers, I have added his socials in the description below. You can have a look into it. He is an amazing person and available for the community at the same time. So, like, you can have a talk with him. It's gonna be very insightful for you as well at the same time. With that note, thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation around AI and cybersecurity with you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And stay tuned for like podcasts like these in the future. Till then, have a good day. Bye bye. See ya.